You're very kind. I haven't even said anything yet. I mean, all the applause. Welcome. Welcome to OEB 2024, the 30th edition of this event. Give it up. Events don't normally last that long, and I think the reason OEB has lasted this long is because it's a great, real mixture of people from all over the world, from many sectors, and we come together and we have a conversation, and there are about 2,000 people in the room, all happy to share with each other and to help each other learn and to help others learn. I love that. I love that. And we have great conversations here, great conversations in the events, and great conversations in the bar, and that's what the event is all about. You're asking yourselves right now, he said 2,000 people, but where are they all from? Okay. We do this every year, but we have some exciting news this year. So, in third position this year, Germany. Okay. Second position, checks notes, the Netherlands, correct? You can always count the Dutch to make a noise, but in first position, Denmark. Wow, okay. Languishing in a sad fourth position is the UK. But excitingly, in fifth position, who do we have? South Africa. Yes. Big it up for our guests from South Africa. Great to have you here. Great to have you here. Okay, we've got a great opening session for you. I'm just going to get through some housekeeping very quickly, and then we'll crack on with our panel. We've got a lot to get through. It's a great start to the day. So, the day closes, as always, with a debate in Potsdam 1, 5:45. We're looking at the collection, storage, and use of non-essential student data. So it's a really interesting and key topic. That's going to be 5:45, a debate taking place. After that, we have a party to celebrate 30 years of OEB. A few tickets are still available for that. You can buy those at the registration desk. We have a retrospective wall looking at 30 years of learning technologies put together by Gilly Salmon and her team, and that's it's outside the pavilion, just opposite the cafe. Now, it starts at 1990, it goes through to 2025, and it stops. I'm told, Gilly tells me she does believe there is a future for us, so it does go beyond 2025, but we'd like your contributions, so please go to the wall and write down your thoughts, or you can scan and enter your thoughts electronically, either way. We also are celebrating 30 years of OEB by having 30 under 30 guests here today, so we're supporting the growth of new people in the industry, helping them accelerate their careers. Now, if you're a 30 under 30 person, it's a bit early, honestly. If you're a 30 under 30 person, could you stand up, please? Fantastic, okay, great. Stay standing. Please support these people in what they're doing, right? These are the future, and we want to accelerate their careers, and also, we have a lot to learn from each other. So thank you very much, 30 under 30s. All right. Let me get through the regular housekeeping bits, and then we're going to get on to Mentimeter. So, firstly, obviously, these events are only made possible by the sponsors, so just want to bring your attention to who they are and say a big thank you to our sponsors, please. Next up, hashtags and socials, very important. The hashtag, as always, is #OEB and then the year 24. So please, whatever platform you're on, use that hashtag when you're, I was going to say tweeting, but if you're, whatever social media platform you're using, please use the hashtag so we can see what's going on. Now, during the panel, we're going to use Mentimeter to collect your thoughts. So I'd love it if you could get your phones out now and scan this code, and there's a question there. So get the phone out, scan the code, and I would love you to answer the question. And then I have a task for you. So the question is, what word comes to your mind When you think about learning in 2025, think about it and then put your word into Mentimeter. Then what I'd like you to do is turn to the person next to you and explain why did you choose that word. All right, so if you've written your word in, please go ahead, explain why did you choose that word, and then I'm going to ask you, in 1 minute's time, I'm going to ask you for some great feedback. So please discuss why did you choose your word, and then we're going to discuss it together. Go ahead. All right, that's fabulous. That's fabulous. I love... Okay, that's wonderful. I'm going to ask you to stop talking now. It's so much easier. It's so much easier to ask people to start talking than it is to ask them to stop. It's like the train starts and you just can't put the brakes on. All right. Some great talking taking place. Very quickly, because we want to get to our panel, but I just want to get some ideas. If you said something which you think might be a bit negative, can you just put your hand up, please? All right. More positive? Well, I think basically we've got an optimistic crowd. Okay, if you've got something you'd like to share, very quickly, can you put your hand up, please? And we'll get some microphones to run out. You're not so chatty now, are you? Okay, we've got somebody here. Okay, got a microphone here, please? Okay, just tell me and I'll shout it back. Go on. Okay.
Hello, good morning. I'm Gerd from Holland Institute of Technology. Okay?
Yeah,
right. Stand. Okay, I'm standing. Hi.
Okay, so firstly, Gila, what's the word?
Word, humanity.
Humanity, I like it, because it's so important now. Oh, that's, Gila, thank you very much. Sorry to cut you off, but thank you so much. Okay, humanity is one word. What else do we have? Sorry? Hard work. Okay, hard work, which is 2 words. If you're in Germany, probably it's 1 word. I don't know. And yes, I think it's going to be quite hard work in 2025. Do we have any other? I saw a hand go up over here. Yeah, go on, let's get a microphone over. Oh, gosh. The tension builds when it's at the back, and we have to get the microphone there. What's the word?
Together.
Oh, I like that. Susanne, why? Hang on. No, explain. Why?
I think learning most of the time is too much about the individual. And it should be more about the collective and about together, learning together.
What a lovely idea. Thank you so much. I think that's humanity, hard work, because it will be hard work, and working together. Do we have one more word? AI. Or ER. Yes, and finally? Liminal. Now, not everybody's first language is English. Do you want to explain what liminal means?
I'm also not English.
Okay, I know. You're not English, but with an excellent command of English.
So it's leaving the things behind that we know.
Yes.
And going to something that we don't know yet.
I love this. So we have humanity, hard work, together, and liminal. The idea that, I'll get on stage, the idea that we're at a border. We're moving from what we know, the familiar, we're going into a new land. And that's the perfect word. All these words are great, thank you. That's the perfect word to lead us into our presentations to kick off this morning. We've got a fabulous panel. Oh, sorry, no, let's have a look at what all the words say. Whoa. Okay, did you bring your glasses with you? Okay, you can see that AI, innovation, transformation, digital are at the center of this, and everything else is rotating around it. I like the idea that we are moving with hard work, togetherness, and humanity into a new area. So thank you very much. I love all the photographs being taken.
Good morning. Buenas, buongiorno, bom dia, salam. Great to be here. Guten Morgen. Great to be here with all of you. I'm glad to see on the word cloud that we had an important topic in the middle, artificial intelligence. And I will talk quite a bit about this. What does it all have to do with learning? Well, we're clearly in a space to where technology and humanity are kind of converging, you could say. Okay? Things that used to be science fiction are science fact. I can ask questions to the machine. I can speak to the machine. The machine can answer me in the voice of Scarlett Johansson. I can dub my videos, I can learn everything on ChatGPT, and on and on and on it goes. Now, AI is a sort of a general purpose technology that is going to be part of everything. And here's the question. How do we make it 95% good and 5% bad, which is inevitable with any technology? Technology is morally neutral until we use it. We have to think about how we use it well. It's probably the most powerful tool we have ever invented. And so when we look at this future, it's really obvious, that a lot of people today are looking at the future and saying, what are you talking about? The good future, there's no such thing. That's my key topic, right? The good future. My own kids, 30 and 35, say the future is bad. 70% of European millennials around 30 say they will not have children because the future sucks. Okay. And you can't blame them, because when you're looking at this curve today, we have all that stuff happening that brings us to the top of what I call perma-change. Millennials, dramatic geopolitical changes, technology disruption, economic paradigms. And it's only the beginning. Not to mention, of course, Trump 2.0. But we're safe to say that business as usual is dead, and therefore education as usual is dead or dying. We keep educating people like it was 30 years ago, the Industrial Revolution, the knowledge revolution, the Internet revolution. We're going beyond knowledge now. Because guess what? Machines can have knowledge. Machines don't have knowledge like us. It's binary, it's numbers, zeros and ones. But still, I'll explain what I mean before I give you this long list of complaints that people have today about climate emergency, AI, Trump 2.0, misinformation, same topic really, geopolitical tensions, nuclear weapons, and the list goes on to the bottom of the page. So if you watch the news, you can clearly get depressed today. But I still believe that the future is better than we think. That there's many things that we are doing right, and also I take hope from the fact that I believe that humans are in principle not evil. Many people look at this and are saying, this is just another proof that, humans are useless. We can't collaborate, we can't get anything done. I really think that when we're looking at this, the underlying real key issue is this. We have an old paradigm, profit and growth. My paradigm, my generation. If you're 30, your paradigm isn't quite the same. I call this people, planet, purpose, and prosperity, the 4 Ps. That's the theme of my work. And we're in the middle of switching of this. So despite the AfD gaining in Germany and Trump in America and Erdogan in Turkey and all other autocrats, right, we are now shifting to a new generation that want different things. We're shifting away from the outdated economic logic that will kill us. Clearly, if we pursue this path, our path is short. Because we're not collaborating, right? We're keeping separate. We're going to look for a future-fit economy, of course, artificial intelligence. If all we do is make more money with AI, we've got 20 years. If that's all we want, we're going to replace humans with machines. In 90% of all jobs and activities, building a general intelligence like Microsoft, OpenAI, Baidu, Alibaba, is trying to replace humans with machines. I am all for machines and technology to replace our donkey work, right? The commodity work, to help us have better tools. I'm against building machines that seek to replace us, that seek to become conscious, have human agency. Think about this for a second. We're going to build a machine that is more intelligent than all of humanity combined. It doesn't strike me as a really hot idea. We're looking to say, we're going to become the second most intelligent species. You know what happens to them, right? They get stepped on. We can be happy to be the pets of the AI. So, we need to move AI over to this, to a different paradigm. This is why OpenAI, for example, cannot be the company that decides the fate of humanity. I stopped my subscription to OpenAI ChatGPT 2 weeks ago, not because I don't like the product. I love the product. I do not want to give money to those guys that seek to essentially replace humans, to build digital humans. That's the mission. That's the official mission, not like Facebook's mission to dominate the world with their misinformation. No, it's actually the pronounced mission. And that has great impact, of course, when we talk about the good future and what we want to see happening here, right? The future fit education. What does that look like when machines have knowledge? Well, here's the paradigm of the past, the paradigm of work. When we study, we have data, information, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. The pyramid of the future moves up to where we focus on deeper knowledge, tacit information, the things that only humans can do. If we meet later, only for 0.4 seconds, we can judge each other and get a feeling about each other without saying a single word. Humans don't think with the brain, we think with the body, with everything. Machines can't do that, they don't have a body. But eventually, of course, somebody will think of giving them a body, right? So they can be even more fake and simulated. Purpose-fit education. Now listen to this guy, Mustafa Sulaiman. He's the head of AI for Microsoft. Okay, see what he has to say about knowledge.
The economics of information are about to radically change because we're going to reduce the cost of production of knowledge to zero marginal cost. And this is just a very difficult thing for people to intuit. But in 15 or 20 years' time, we will be producing new scientific cultural knowledge at almost zero marginal cost.
Well, that's interesting. Of course, he would say that he's selling software for crying out loud, right? This very software. To produce knowledge at zero marginal cost. Well, think about that for a second. What kind of mission is that? It's like produce humans at zero marginal cost. Knowledge, that's what we're supposed to have. So, in the old days, we increased our muscles through technology, the industrial age. In the new age, we increase our brain, we augment our brain, we can simulate our brain, and we can have AI become our brain. In many ways, you can say that's just one step forward from this becoming our brain. And everything is in here, and we kind of rely on it like a second brain. So this is clearly a moment where we have to ask the question, what about the heart? Right? All that matters is the brain. You must be joking, right? This is not what human life is all about. The brain, intelligence. The more intelligent, the better. Too much intelligence will kill us. We've had a lot of people who were extremely intelligent and made a mess of the world right here in Germany. We got to think about what that means. Intelligence only? That's not enough. IQ only? That's not enough. When we think about this world, we have OpenAI building artificial general intelligence. General intelligence means a machine that can do all of human tasks better than humans. All of them, not just one, like writing an email or something, right? OpenAI, Sam Altman says, the coming change will center around the AI to do the phenomenal ability to think, create, understand, and reason. Well, I would say, okay, thinking machines, search engines, writers, summarizers, that's all pretty cool. I like that. But a machine that understands and reasons brings up an interesting quote from Blade Runner, 1982.
Commerce is our goal here at Tyrell. More human than human is our motto.
You may have seen the movie 1982, Blade Runner. More human than human is our motto. What more ridiculous definition of your company can you think of? When we talk about learning, more human than human, what does that mean? It's like being exponentially human, right? Basically creating a genie that can do all these things. Look at this graph. It's showing you already, here on the left, it's showing you what we can already do with machines. Summarizing, translating, handwriting, grade school math, passing the bar exam, code generation. See that curve on the left? It all goes to 100%. But what's going to happen in 10 years? It'll be 1,000%, right? And what do we do then? Well, of course, you know, that the definition is really that
it's worth understanding what will happen in the next 5 years. The work that these guys highlighted are going to generate savants, that is, specialized assistants that will work with you in whatever you do. An artist savant, a music savant, a physics savant, and so forth.
Well, thank you, Eric. That's Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google. We're going to generate savants. We're going to generate a teacher savant. Right? Is that the mission? Is that possible? Well, if we think of a teacher as just a brain, a purveyor of information, then it's possible. But of course, you all know that's not the case. Right? So this is called technology optimism. Right? It's the idea of saying everything is a technology problem. There are no other problems than technology, and if there are problems, we can solve them with more technology. Of course, we know that the real problems in the world aren't about technology. They're about our collaboration. Culture, politics, religion, whatever, right? Those are the real issue. Generating savants, interesting idea is said, we might be scraping the upper limits of what humans can do. That's probably true. We can't memorize Wikipedia. We can't be as fast in translating. You said something even more interesting. AI, by contrast, is the ultimate polymath. Read this article here in the Atlantic magazine. Eric says, AI, by contrast, is the ultimate polymath. You know, a scientist that can do any science, polymath. Transcend the limitations of intellectual discovery. The machine is going to translate intellectual discovery. We're going to go from a future of where we are, the Neoluvian, the Vitruvian man, woman, right, where we have science around us, to a future where this is the next inventor. Now we have to ask the question, some of that would be good. Right? All of that would be very bad. How do we go forward? What do we teach people? When we teach people to be like a machine, right, they end up machines, not surprising. If you work like a robot will take your job. If you learn like a robot, you'll never have a job. Okay. We have to learn not to be a robot. Well, that sounds familiar. It's really not that new, but even today, that's of course a big mission. Because Eric says we're going to have the homo technicus, the human that's amplified by AI. To which I would say, well, that's great that we have all these amazing tools, but how do we remain human when we are homo technicus? I mean, here in Germany, of course, that question is ridiculous, because in Germany, you know, we're humanists. And in Europe, we're humanists. But what about America? We have some humanists there. We have to look for them now, but they're still there. Right? And artificial intelligence is now progressing towards the general intelligence. And clearly, we need to say, well, that's just cool, but we need to draw a line here. And say, okay, how much of too much is killing us? We cannot win the war for artificial general intelligence. Because a war on AI, like the war on nuclear weapons, kills everyone. This is only something we can work on together. We have to have a hard stop also, of course, here and say, we clearly don't want a machine that's going to be as intelligent than all of humanity, which is possible by 2030. 2030. The so-called singularity. Now I'm going to give you some good news as well, so we don't have to go and hit the bar right away. So AI is a powerful tool. It's really a magical tool. A person with AI will beat the person without AI. Simple as that. A person with a good tool generally beats the person with a bad tool. But the tool isn't the person. The tool isn't a religion, like technology has become a religion. The most popular religion in the world is not any of the ones that we know.
Using AI for probably the biggest positive transformation that education has ever seen. And the way we're going to do that is by giving every student on the planet an artificially intelligent but amazing personal tutor. And we're going to give every teacher on the planet an amazing...
Okay, Sal from Khan Academy, right? We're going to give every person an AI instructor and an AI tutor, right? Is that really going to solve the problem, or are we going to end up in the world like this, where AI tells us what to believe? What about our own thinking? I mean, if it was just information and data, yes, clearly we could use that tool. But it's not. We should not put the machine at the core of learning, or we're going to end up in a place like this, a place where we have, you know, a really nice looking, you can see, by the way, always that artificial intelligence always generates really sort of cookie cutter pictures. So a teacher is always a woman, and she's barely dressed, right? This is what the AI thinks of a teacher, right? I mean, okay, never mind. Short excursion on that one. So here, we have to clearly face this fact. We're moving in education to a post-knowledge economy. Post-knowledge in the sense of simple knowledge, right? Not all knowledge, but facts. I mean, if we can ask the machine about any facts, why would we memorize all of it? And we are in a fact-based knowledge economy in universities, colleges, human resources, what have you. Right? It's not about facts, it's about the unfacts that a machine cannot beat us. Machines will do the routine work, all of it, sooner or later, like all of it. From driving car to flying the airplane, to calculating financial return, to doing financial advice, to doing a social media post, and so on and so on. That's what machines are capable of. We're looking at a world where these things, the packets of information and learning, the AI is already quite good at this. Right? Contributing all the way to insight, and in the future, it will grow exponentially to contribute to all of them. What it can't do is wisdom, or foresight, or compassion. It can fake compassion, of course, that is possible, right? But it can never be compassionate. So here's my colleague, Gerd, the bot, with an advice.
I think education currently is still just providing knowledge. And really what's happening is that knowledge is becoming something that computers can have. And we have to go above the knowledge, which is tacit knowledge, quiet knowledge, understanding, intuition, imagination, consciousness, spirituality, all these things that are a little bit difficult to describe.
All right, thank you, Gerd Bot. That was generated with a tool called Runway. It's a pretty cool tool for, making digital copies of yourself, I suppose. So in this world, the explicit knowledge will be done by machines because it's explicit, it's obvious. Right? Our knowledge work will be this, right? The implicit, the tacit knowledge, as it always has been, but even more so now, as AI is coming to life on this part of the world and changing our way that we look at things forever. This is what we do, right? We sense, we feel, we smell, we intuit, we have imagination, all of that stuff. We do not want that for the AI to copy that stuff, even if it was possible, which probably it will be eventually. We do not want the AI to do that. Right? And why would we build this? It's like building our own doomsday box. Right? Machine intelligence is not the same as human intelligence, and we should keep it that way. Human intelligence involves dozens of things. This is why we do learning in person, not just on the screen. Arthur C. Clarke, science fiction writer, says, let me remind you that information is not knowledge and knowledge is not wisdom. Information is not knowledge and knowledge is not wisdom. That's why we study, so we can attain wisdom, right? Some sort of realization. Not some BS copied content that spreads all over Twitter, whoever they are now. So in this world, we have to remind ourselves, machines don't think, machines don't have hunches, they don't understand, they imagine, they certainly don't care. And even if they could, I don't want them to care. Right? I don't give a damn about what the machine finds likely for me to create happiness. Right? Then we're going to live in the movie Her, which I'm sure you've seen, right? Where we are really connected, but dying from loneliness. That sounds like a good program for the future. So, technology alone is not enough. Intelligence alone is dangerous. Learning is not about data and information. It's about realization. And this is what we have to pursue. If you invent technical tools, they should help us to get there, not replace us to get there. That mission is unattainable and also a very bad idea. In this world, we have to keep reminding ourselves everything that is worth paying attention to, movies, books, keynote speakers, futurists, is the result of an effort. You make an effort, that's how you get somewhere nice. If you're a good cook, you make an effort, you cook the same dish 557 times until you figure it out. That's called effort. And AI doesn't have any effort, because it doesn't know what it means to have a meaning. Right? And the choices you make. Brian Eno, musician, said, an AI can make music, but it cannot make great music. Right? An AI can write a book, but it cannot write a great book. Because it requires effort. Teaching, learning, understanding requires effort. It doesn't drop down to you like the helicopter program in Minority Report. You know, it doesn't do that. So let me summarize. The robots are coming to take our routines. Routines. A world without us doing all the routines is fine. Right? Most routines we don't like. So that's, in some cases, between 30 and 70, 90% of our jobs. If you work in a call center, it's 95% of your job. It's routine. That's not a good job to pursue, clearly. Right? But in this future, we have to set new priorities. Learning and education that's fit for the future focuses on human-only traits and skills. Human-only. Intuition, imagination, negotiation, empathy, compassion, consciousness. That's what education needs to focus on. And on top of that, of course, it needs to focus on understanding technology, because it's going to be everywhere. Make no mistake about this, very few people can get by by just being, human 100% and never look at technology. So if you know how to program, always good. I don't, but it's always a good thing, but it's not mutually exclusive. Last point, always keep the humans in the loop. Hitler. No matter what you do, that's the key to success, not to become a commodity. You become a commodity as a human, as a teacher, or as a student, you're worthless. You are indeed, as Yuval Harari says, a useless human. We don't want that. We want to stay useful. Right? So let's keep these rules intact. I'm going to wrap up by saying that the good future, as I call it, right, brings up choices for us. The choices we make define our future. If you have kids or you're going to have kids, you got to think about that. Right? What kind of future do you want your kids to have? The wolf you feed, old Cherokee Indian saying, the wolf you feed is the wolf that wins. And that is about the future of education. Thank you very much.
Gerd, thank you. Before you rush off, thank you very much, Gerd. Before you rush off, thank you very much.
Okay.
You mentioned knowledge, you mentioned information, you mentioned wisdom, insight. I love the Arthur C. Clarke quote that, yes, we want wisdom and insight, but they rest on knowledge, which rests on information. Now, are you saying that we can't get to insight without still doing the drudgery, I call it the drudgery, let's call it the work, of learning facts, our facts, and learning to build information in our heads which becomes knowledge? Is that still important?
I think to some degree it will always be important, but not in the degree of 20 years ago or 40 years ago when I went to university, memorizing all that stuff. It's probably useful as an exercise, right? But in reality, I can access any stuff I want now. So really my skill has to be about making sure it's relevant. And relevance is not a mathematical component, where it's relevant that the car has a certain technology makes it work and so on. No, it's holistic, right? So I understand the world because I understand people, I can smell them, I can hear them. I don't just compute. And if we reduce life to computation, we're toast, right? Because we're not going to be better computers than the computers.
We can't beat the computers, that's for sure. Gerd, thank you so much. All right. Finally, let's get our third speaker onto the stage, Timandra Harkness, author and broadcaster, author of Technology is Not the Problem. I'm hoping we're going to finish on an optimistic note, talking about how we can move forward with people and technology. Let's see what happens. Timandra. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. I have realized this morning, as I was having a last look over my slides, that I've managed to spell my own name wrong in my own email. I'd love to claim I put this in as an example of human fallibility, but it is actually just human fallibility. So feel free to email me, but you need to spell my name the way my name is spelled, not the way I've put it on my own slide. That was a good start, wasn't it? Don't applaud me for not being able to spell my own name. Bless you. What a lovely audience you are. So, yes, Technology is Not the Problem is my newer book. It's out this year. It's kind of a follow-up to the first book, which is Big Data, Does Size Matter?, which was very much a beginner's guide to big data for people who'd heard the term but weren't really sure what it was, whether it was a good thing, whether they should be interested in it. But it's not really the book I was expecting to write, because I was expecting to write a much more straightforward follow-up, focusing on one thing in particular that technology is doing for us now, which is personalizing everything for us. And so the original working title for this book was The Personalized Century, which I was contrasting with the mass century. And historians, I know you'll be getting very tense here because that's not how history works. But just broadly, looking back 100 years, we were living in the mass century of mass production, everything given to us en masse. Today, everything, thanks to technology, is personalized for us. So I'm just going to give you a couple of quick examples here. This is my favorite example of how mass production has turned into personalized consumption. Not only can we get personalized products and services and personalized marketing and personalized advertising, our dogs can get personalized dog food. And I particularly love this because my parents' dogs have this from this very company. So the two dogs, they have two separate bags of dog food, each of which has the dog's name on. And at one point, one of the dogs, I'm not going to name and shame, one of the dogs was getting a bit tubby, and my stepmother rang up and had a conversation with a human being and explained the problem, and they reformulated, and they sent a new bag with a different formula. And I have looked, they have different ingredients on the bags, right? Formulated, and I love this, for the dog's age, breed, and lifestyle. So you didn't know your dog had a lifestyle, but oh yes, your dog has a lifestyle and can get personalized dog food. And I just remember when I lived at home, and there was a different dog, obviously, and I used to get sent down the market, and I would come back with a tube of, I don't know what was in it, but I found an eyelid once. It was very much like any meat byproducts into the mincer, every dog gets the same. So that is the personalized world we live in, and it's thanks to technology, and particularly to data, that we can have everything personalized for us. Another example, which will be very familiar to you, is the way we've gone from mass media, where everything was selected by really a handful of people who controlled the newspapers, the radio channels, and then television channels, decided what we would get. And yeah, you could pick your newspaper or your channel, but then you would get much the same as everybody else at much the same time, in much the same order. And again, the biggest example of this was the moon landings, when 1 in 7 of the world's population watched live as the first humans walked on the moon. That's 500 million people. And that was because the people who edited and controlled the news media all decided that this was a really important historic occasion and that we should see it and that we'd want to see it. And so the people alive then, 1 in 7 of them, saw it. Since then, 500 million people have watched a YouTube video called Charlie Bit My Finger, filmed on a mobile phone of a baby biting his brother's finger. Now, was that because the news editors of the world decided this was really important and we should see it? No, it's because each of us now has our own channel. And our choice of news and entertainment and whatever else comes to us partly through our own choice, partly through the network of people we're connected with, who enough of them went, well, this is good, this is a funny video, I'm going to share this with my network, and partly, of course, because of the algorithms that select what they think ought to come to us. Even more than Charlie Bit My Finger, over 12 billion people have watched Baby Shark. And apologies for any parents in the room who now have that earworm for the rest of the weekend. And this, of course, was the coming together of that, people choosing for themselves, their friends and contacts, sending them things, and the algorithms, and a very clever marketing department. So that's more than the entire population of the Earth, the viewings of Baby Shark. So some people have gone there and seen it more than once. Thank you, small children, for that. So this is the personalized world we're living in, and technology is the way it happens. But in the course of researching the book, I realized that the technology is not why we have this personalized world. The technology is the how, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with this process. Each of us has lots of data collected about us, and then a mathematical model is built of each of us, and then that mathematical model, that persona, is targeted with whatever the algorithms think we should get. And although we love to think that the world is being filtered for us, of course it's not that. We are being filtered for the purposes of whoever wants to target us with products, with personalized dog food, with adverts, with annoying videos about sharks. But that's the how. And I became very curious about why do we live in this world? So I went and did some research trips, and I went to, just to show that this is a cultural phenomenon, not only about technology, I went to this pop-up museum in Amsterdam. They have pop-ups that come and go around Europe, so you may have seen in other iterations, called the Museum. Now, you know, when you go to a museum or gallery today, there's always a place where you can stand and do a selfie or even a TikTok video, and then the hashtag, so they encourage you to share your social media content to publicize the museum or the gallery. The museum basically just dispensed with the works of art or the historical objects, and it's all about spaces where you can generate social media content about you and whoever you've gone with, your date or your family or your friends or whoever. And it's very self-aware and funny. It takes you on a little journey. So first of all, I got to move my likes around a great warehouse full of likes in a forklift truck to show how popular I am. And then I was so popular, I got to drown in a sea of likes. I lost myself. And then I was reborn into a hall of mirrors. And this was actually a very moving experience. Pun intended, but you did right to ignore it. But it was weirdly emotional, because suddenly I was on my own. I couldn't tell how big this space was. I couldn't tell how it related to the rest of the building. All I could see was myself reflected back to myself an infinite number of times. And I felt this was the most brilliant making physical of the world that we now live in, where we are constantly reflected back to ourselves. And we really have less and less touch with what's out there in the outside world. Now, I also went to Rome. And this you would think would be the complete contrast to that. Rome, a city where pilgrims have gone for centuries and centuries in search of something outside of themselves, bigger than themselves, older than themselves, something to give a much bigger meaning to an individual human life. And I started off my visit at the Pantheon, which, as you probably know, is a couple of thousand years old, was built by the Emperor Hadrian as a temple to all the Roman gods, then became a church. So it has survived as a physical building by moving with the times of the society that it was living in. So I looked at the website just to find out the opening times, and I was really startled by the message that was on the website from the rector, from the chief priest. So the message from the Pantheon, the temple, first of all, to all the Roman gods and then the Christian god, was, the Pantheon wants you to be a pilgrim, the protagonist of a journey that sees you find what you are and what you love, what you hope for, and what you want. Become a pilgrim of yourself. Seek and find yourself. Let yourself be looked for, and let yourself be found. As for us, we just want to be your travel companions. And I thought, this is the transformation of certainly Western civilization. That Rome and this temple, this church, from being a place where you come on pilgrimage to find something outside of yourself, to make yourself part of a much bigger human project that's older than you and will probably continue after you're dead, has become a place where you seek and find yourself as an individual. And this, I think, is a transformation. So it's not just about technology. And this is why I've ended up saying technology is not the problem. Now, as you might have picked up, I don't entirely think that this project of personalization is entirely a good thing. I'm going to talk a little bit about why in the time I have left. But I don't think the problem is the technology. I think we could equally well use the technology in other ways. I think the problem is that we have put ourselves culturally into this hall of mirrors where everything is designed to reflect us back to ourselves. So, for example, let's think about the difference between using an app to get around and a map. And first thing to say is it really doesn't matter, I think, whether the map is on paper, whether it's on parchment, whether it's on a screen. What matters is that if you use a navigation app to get around, you tell it where you are and you tell it where you want to get to, and it gives you only the information you need to get from where you are to where you've said you want to go. But if you look at a map, the map gives you all sorts of other information. In fact, the map gives you so much information, you have to learn to read a map to get the information that you want and that you need. It's a shared body of information and knowledge that you share with everyone else that has the same map. So you have a common ground of knowledge to relate you to your physical surroundings. And it's going to give you lots of things you didn't ask for. It's going to show you how things physically relate to each other. It's going to show you some places that you didn't say you wanted to get to. But now you can see they're very close to the route you need. So maybe you'd like to divert and go and look at something else. You can even maybe look at a different map, a map of how the city you're in used to be, so that you can get a sense that the city has changed over time. And this might give you some reasons why it looks the way it looks today, as opposed to some other way that it might look. So you get a sense, again, that the city was there before you were there. And I think this is a very good analogy for learning in a discipline, that it's important not just to come into a discipline and learn the facts that you don't know in order to get you the skill that you don't have, but you also need a sense of how does this relate to other knowledge within the discipline? What do you share with other people learning within the same discipline, even if you're not actually going to end up going in the same direction? Do you get a sense of the discipline that you're in, whether it's history, geography, philosophy, mathematics, cooking, that it existed before you did and will probably carry on after you're gone, and that you are part of a community of scholars, if you like, on a common journey? Now, I went to Rome not to look at the Pantheon, in fact, but to interview a monk who is the AI advisor to the Vatican. It's a wonderful job. It's called Paolo Benanti. He wrote a great book called Homo Faber, which is man the maker. And I went to see him. We talked about all sorts of things. We talked about how he was wearing glasses, which were made by humans, but then shaped the way he saw the world. And we talked about how Google would now tag me wrongly as a Roman Catholic because I sat in a monastery garden for 2 hours. But we talked in particular about how humans create themselves. And he used the analogy of these unfinished sculptures by Michelangelo called I Prigioni. They were originally commissioned for the tomb of a pope, and then the commission was downscaled. I don't know if this is familiar to anybody in the room. And so he never finished them. And they're sitting in Florence, in fact. Now, Paolo was trying to explain to me that humans can't create ourselves in the abstract. We can't just decide out of thin air who we're going to be and be that person. But equally, we're not completely determined by our circumstances and our inheritance and what we get from our parents and our culture. So there's a tension between the two. And if you look at these sculptures, there are two things going on. One is that you can see the chisel marks that Michelangelo left that now look like his rough sketch marks for the person that he could see emerging from the stone. And Michelangelo said, the sculpture is in the stone, I just have to free it and let it out. But you also somehow get a sense that the figures are trying to free themselves, that they're trying to emerge from the stone that they're made of. And this is what Paolo Benanti said to me. He said, the rock is there, the rock is given. You're born into a certain place and time in history, you have a certain biology, you have certain parents, whatever your circumstances. That is a given, but what you make of it is something else, and that's what freedom is. That you can either end up with a pile of rubble, or you can end up with a beautiful, well-formed human being. And how you get there, that is between an educator and a student. Because however much data you have on a student, however much machine personalization is going on, the data can only work with the past and the present and by comparing students to other students and make statistical predictions about how that person might turn out. Whereas a great educator can look at a person and see somebody who's not there yet, who doesn't exist yet, the potential historian or geographer or chef or philosopher, and see that person and work with that person with a relationship of trust to bring that person into being. So like these half-formed sculptures trying to fight their way out of the rocks with Michelangelo's care and vision and skill, a student can work with an educator to emerge from what they're given, what they're given to start with, but become somebody completely new, because education should be a transformative experience. And that is the thing that data-driven personalization can't do, because ironically what is lost is the person. What it needs is the human relationship of the educator, using tools, including technology. And I started studying philosophy during lockdown, so shout out Panopto. I learned a lot about early modern philosophy of mind on a lecture screen this big. So the tools can be used for this personal relationship. But what you can't do is capture a student in data and then use that to personalize their experience like a navigation map, because education is not dog food. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Welcome to the stage, Payal Arora, the Professor of Inclusive AI Culture at Utrecht University, who we're so lucky to have you here, not just because of what you're going to say, but also because, frankly, the journey was a bit of a nightmare. Thank you so much for being here. Anybody who's come from the Netherlands will know it hasn't been easy.
Hi. All right, so, this is a perfect launching pad, because I'm going to make a proposition here. What if we were to shift gears from thinking about training AI to teaching AI? Then how would we see the world and engage with the world differently, right? Through AI and with AI. So I make this argument of co-constructive work, which seems rather banal, right, in my new book, From Pessimism to Promise. But what's interesting is it's going against a tidal wave of a pessimism bias, particularly in the West, against all things digital, including AI, as Gerd has brought up, right? If you look at the media headlines, it's like AI is destroying our democracy, our social lives, mental health, and even an existential threat, right? And if you look at the new books in the last few years, it's like AI is oppressive, it's racist, it's sexist. It's literally these values are baked into design, which makes you feel deeply impotent and helpless towards the future. No wonder They don't see the future, the ones in the West primarily. Because what's fascinating, and this is a footnote which we're not going to go into right now, but is that majority of the world doesn't think like those in the West. They are supremely optimistic, like as if they're on cocaine about AI and all things digital. And why is that so, right? Because they see it as, the only way to get past chronic issues, because AI is a friend, it's an extension, it's a tool to use to overcome chronic issues, right? So my point is a different kind of proposition, is that if we put learning and teaching at the center in the making of AI, then we can think differently in a way in making AI a little more just, fairer, and more equitable, to make these technologies work for us and not against us, right? So that way we don't need to brace for the future, we can embrace the future. So, I guess the clicker again? All right. Maybe another one here. All right, that's another clicker. Okay, so just to give you a framing, right? The training AI versus teaching AI, what does that mean? Now, training AI, this is the computational mindset, it's repetitive, it's about optimization, which makes sense. But when you see it from that lens, then you are thinking about rote learning. But if you're thinking about it in dialogic and social process, you're thinking it as an iterative process. It's you and the AI learning from each other, right? We are getting to know how people think so we can change it if it's becoming more racist, if it's not inclusive. There's a sort of a mirror effect. Reproductive approach, the whole idea is we need to train by repeating cycles again and again and again, right? So that's very much the emphasis versus a reflexive approach. Because every time you're training AI, you are looking at certain results. You're paying attention to, is this what we want to be? And so we can think in those ways and shift the algorithm, right? Data as raw material, in which case we see it as something out there. It's like really abstract. It's like so when you go, like Sam Altman, through WorldCoin, he had this sort of project where he took an orb and went through something like 30 countries from the Philippines, Indonesia, capturing data. Because it was raw data to be mined, right? Very colonialistic, and then built his AI tools, versus it being a very essence of the way we communicate with each other, an extension of our dreams, our futures, and that shifts the paradigm about the way in which we approach data, right? And it's universalistic design, so it's, let's come up with a standard so as to dictate how we produce data versus data is encoded with values, cultures, context. So when we are, engaging with that knowledge, we are recognizing which cultures are represented and which are not, right? And last is, when you're thinking from a computational mindset, you're thinking about standardization. It has to, be reproducible versus that of diversification. Does it include everybody, right? So this is what happens when computer scientists try to do diversity in algorithms, right? So the Gemini AI tried to respond to the founding fathers, and in the name of inclusivity threw in Native Americans, and I'm sure many of you have seen that, in the name of diversity. So this is an issue. When you eliminate the social scientists and humanities, voices into this conversation. So I'm going to give you two different projects that I'm engaged with right now, because it's not just a theorizing. We are really doing this as we speak, right? I'm engaged in two projects. One is called Finder, which is a Horizon European grant, where we are working, we meaning social scientists, humanities scholars. I'm an digital anthropologist, which is basically a fancy way of saying I study how people make sense of digital technologies in their everyday life, right? We're working with tech companies, recruitment agencies, so it's a real stakeholder approach. And the goal is to reduce discrimination in AI-enabled recruitment software. And we're trying to retrain AI by building data sets, CVs from data donation campaigns, and tweaking it in the way in which we want a fairer future. Because as you must have read about Amazon and many other sort of incidents where you ask AI to produce the best candidates for these CEO positions, and by default be white male in, say the US, of a middle class background, because that has been the standard. So if that is a standard, that will remain the standard. So garbage in, garbage out, because we need to change the paradigm. Otherwise, we're going to get the same old biases of the past into the future, even though as a society, we have moved forward. So we can't be held back by our data, can we, right? So that's what we're doing. And the second project is that we've been hired by a major multinational design company to debias their generative AI visual software. Because when you do Google images of, say, women at work, they all seem to be in the office, with straight hair and smiling and typing away, right? So you Google things and, it doesn't seem to reflect majority of the world. And so what does that look like? How do we do that? And here's some models we're developing. So with the Finder project, right, this is a really fun thing, is that through the data donation campaign, we got all these CVs, and the computer programmers took a shot at it. They're like, we've got a solution to debias. We remove the names, the gender, the age, and any religious and sexual notifications. And there you go. We have a completely debiased CV. Now we can use it to populate it. And we're like, all right, give us a shot. Let the humanities come in. We looked at it and said, wow, this is super biased, because there are a lot of proxies of discrimination. So the way in which you can train a model through proxies of learning framework is by, say, for example, these three. We have identity and agency, networks of visibility, cultural capital, right? So let me give you an example on identities and agency. Is Polish a descriptive or a discriminatory variable? Well, it's descriptive if you live in Poland, right? But it could be discriminatory if you're looking at a sector, like a construction sector, in a context like the UK. So when you are programming, it's about context. Knowledge is never acontextual, right? So we are accounting for the identity in context. Or, for example, languages can be a proxy of whether you value somebody. Is it French, or is it a Hindi or Telugu? And you wonder, oh, that's not the kind of language I want, because it signals an international person that you may not want in your group. Or it could be gaps in CVs, which can reflect gender, right? Or identity-based recognition, where I want to positively discriminate. I'm celebrating that I won an award of Women in AI. I don't want that wiped out of my CV, right? So this is where the humanities comes in, is we recognize there are proxies based on context, and we are laying these layers, and we can infuse it into the algorithm to become more sensitized and more relevant, right? Or the networks of visibility, right? So you want to show which groups you're associated, like this group, right? You want to show you went to this conference. You don't want it to be wiped out. And then I can assess whether you're South African, German, Danish, right? What are the likelihoods? Somebody just announced that. And then the last is cultural capital. We know already zip codes give you information about race, for example, in the US, right? The whole redlining, where I can tell if you came from the Bronx, you're probably African American. For instance, right? There's decades of study on that. So the address says a lot about where you're at. Or hobbies. Do you play golf? Are you a part of a rowing club? That signals a kind of identity. So these are really important characteristics for a model. And here's another for the design company that we are producing as we speak, which is very exciting work. We've developed 3 frameworks, but let me focus on one group, because we've taken many different marginalized groups in many different parts of the world. We are moving in Kenya, in India, Ecuador, and I'm happy to chat more later. But for now, we took a group of disabilities in India, and I'm just going to focus on that. How do you represent disabilities visually? So through a generational framework. And we worked with many disability groups in India, and here's what they said, right? From their sort of insights and their inputs, we came up with a framework of 3 points. They want to be normalized. They don't want to seem like something exotic and out there that needs to be pitied. They want to normalize their everyday, right? I can take care of my day-to-day. They want agency. They want to show they have control. And they want to be humanized. It was very important for them to be laughing in a social setting. And these are visuals which can make a difference. So let me give you some examples. This is normalizing. This is a person who is visually impaired, and she wanted to show the one who is potting and putting the clothes. There's a disabled person there who wants to show that she's doing these groceries, she's at work, she uses a lift, just banal things to show that this is the kind of work that she wants her to be represented in. Agency, right, where they can use tools because they can do this kind of stuff. They are using their mobiles. Mobiles are permeating their lives, right? Subtitling. Humanizing, where they have children, families, relationships, they're laughing, they have relationships with people, And in terms of curational, right, it's about being personal. That is, it really prioritizes me, my family, it's relatable. I show some kind of affinity and belonging, and performative, right? So let me give you some examples. So here we were asked, which photo do you prefer? The person is on a wheelchair, and she said, well, I prefer this one because I have a relationship, even though we are saying this is representing you at work. So obviously that photo looks like she's doing work, but she chose the other one because it shows she can have that relationship at work, right? Which one is better? This is a hearing impaired person. She said she preferred because it was a two-way communication. And these nuances matter, right? And which is performative? We asked him, which one do you prefer? She said it's the one where I'm holding the mobile phone, not the other person. So I'm the one who has power, right? So as Jeffrey Bowker says, who's a computer scientist, data should be cooked with care. I agree, right? But who should be the cooks? I believe educationalists are, right? Because we have the recipes to cook the data with care, and with that, we can shift the algorithm in ways that work for us. And so, happy to engage with you all more, and if you want to learn more about our projects, come see us at Inclusive AI Lab, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really good to see a range of what you're doing there. In Richard Attenborough's movie, Gandhi, there's a really good scene where Gandhi is starting to build work in India, and he's doing things, and he's got a white missionary from England who's helping him. And the missionary says, tell me, what else can I do? And Gandhi looks at him and says, I think the best thing you can do is leave us alone. How much is Western interference in the very active use of AI outside Europe and the US, how much is that interfering? How much is it useful? How can we work together better?
It's a really good question. So I come from Bangalore, and I left Bangalore when I was a teenager to the San Francisco. But I remember there were T-shirts in San Francisco saying, don't get Bangalorized. And the outsourcing hub was asked by the government in Bangalore saying, what can we do to help you? And they're like, by not interfering. And so that was also talk about an updated version. But I get this question again and again, particularly with well-meaning technologists who say, maybe I shouldn't interfere. Actually, I disagree, because you have a power, you have platform. It's more about how do you build relationships, right? So if you're a big tech company, I'm working with many of them, what they do is they treat their outsourcing outfits as really back offices, not actual partners in co-creating algorithms, co-creating design. So, which is weird, because then they hire me, so the company that I'm working for right now, They basically hired me to go investigate all these different countries, but they don't want me in touch with their local teams because they're like, no, they investigate American users by staying up all the way in the night. I'm like, this doesn't make any business sense, right? And I think so we need to reorganize the way in which we relate to our own divisions, our own groups, and recognize that there's strength and power. You may have the finance and platforms, but you do not have the context, the know-how, and that's what will get you together.
Brilliant.
Way forward.
That word context again is so important. Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much,
Thanks.
Payal. And I really think that resonates with... I love the idea that education is not dog food. Can we get the Mentimeter up, please? If you've been following and you've been throwing your thoughts into Mentimeter, I have the answers in front of me. If we could bring the list up? I mean, I can see the whole list in front of me. The top one is, how can we ensure that we've had voted up, is how can we ensure that change is not led by profiteers? There are a couple of questions about profit, so I'm amalgamating them. I'd love to ask all our panelists, we live in a capitalist society, profit dominates things, we may have a vision of the future that is optimistic, can it succeed with the profit motive alongside it? Let's start, Gerd, with you.
Yeah, this is a big problem today. You know, we clearly have technology dominated by profiteers or by, by companies who seek a profit. In my view, there's nothing wrong with companies seeking profits in the system of business to monetize whatever you're doing. But it's a relative thing. It's not an absolute thing. Right? So I think we need to have rules, guidelines, regulations, social contracts, and generally sort of a way of switching our thinking from the old-fashioned way of saying whatever produces money is fine. Then we end up with Aramco, the Saudi Arabian oil company, or Meta, which is in a very similar business, data mining as opposed to oil mining. But then we end up with companies who do very well, doing very bad things. And so I think this is a process that we're going to see come to a head now in 2024, 25, as we look at geopolitics. There, I would say it will get worse before it gets better.
Okay.
And I think we're heading to a point where there is a clear confrontation between the profiteering and the sort of humanity thinking. Right? Right. And it's coming to a head. And I think that's actually a good thing, because in many ways, I would say we are currently as we were in 1968, when I was 7. In 1968, we had a huge switch of paradigm in the world, that everything became different after that. And now we're in 24, same thing, right? So humans change because of pain and love. And right now, it's a painful moment. But the change is coming. I think the change away from this sort of extreme capitalism is in the wings.
So you predict a summer of love for technology, yeah?
25.
25, okay, you heard it here first, folks. Timandra, summer of love?
A summer of love for technology, maybe so. I mean, I think the profit question is interesting, because when I talk about the kind of uber personalization, in fact, they talk about hyper personalization, people will often come back and say, but it is that way because companies can make a profit out of making us keep coming back, this very engaging social media world where we want the like, we want to see ourselves reflected in our smartphones, but with likes and clicks and engagement. And so it's kind of inescapable because of that. But I think that's the wrong way around. I think the companies operate on that model because we keep going back. And we keep going back because our insecurities mean we want to be reflected in the Hall of Mirrors. Right. And so it needs a change from us. If we want to change the model, it's not about, oh, well, the companies are always going to do that because it's profitable. I think if we change our behavior and say, actually, you know, we value getting the same news as everybody else, maybe, or the same, we value a model of education where it's not only about you tailor content to me, but I also want this sense of I'm part of a lot wider community.
So a bit like the students in Paris in 1968.
Yes, we should take to the streets and demand less personalization. That would work. For sure.
Payal, can we live with the profit motive? Is that going to prevent us getting the value from technology?
I think, when we say profit, we keep talking about companies.
Yeah.
I want to flip it and talk about young people in the global south. Mind you, they're 90% of the world's population. And they're very optimistic because guess what? Because of AI, they are profiting because many of their governments are failing them. So they are leading the creator economies and doing hyper-personalization and are really so for instance, numerous stories that I cover in my book about an educator who gets laid off during COVID. He makes a living on Pornhub because he knows people are on that platform and he's teaching mathematics and he has millions of views, right? That is entrepreneurship, that is profiting from patterns, that's profiting from cultural moments. And there are numerous such stories where these are young people who are really desperate to not be, a farmer or a cook or anything that the parents or the grandparents did. And they are doing a lot and profiting from these AI tools, which explains why majority of them are so much more optimistic about the future. So when we speak about profit, let's not just think in terms of the companies. Let's think about the everyday entrepreneurs that we don't really imagine and think about because these tools are transforming their lives in ways that we cannot even fathom and imagine as we capture these stories again and again. Where are they inhabiting their, activities, selling pickles in Kerala to a diaspora, very much the hyper-personalization, we captured so many of these stories. In Kenya, a plumber was giving fintech tips on Instagram, right? And so all these examples come down to let's start asking when we say profit for whom, for what purpose, and can we get behind it if it means well-being for the majority world.
That's brilliant. So everybody's agreed it's in our hands, one way or the other. I often use the example of a teenage boy who's 18, working in Bangalore as a soccer data analyst for a football club in the UK. And it's possible for him to do that because of remote connectivity, of data, because he's smart. He doesn't have a newspaper around. He's a soccer analyst. He's a soccer analyst for Dundee United, though, and they were unfortunately relegated, so I'm not sure how good his analysis was. But nonetheless, the work can be done. Perhaps it's up to us to choose what we do, our behavior. I like it. There's a question about the representation of women in images and so on. You had lots of representation of images, and you talked about how that was important. Let's just see across the panel, what is it that we need to do to make sure that we have representation that is accurate, as you said in your talk, Payal?
Yeah, so this, actually that was one of the fundamental themes we came up with, women at work, for example. So when you're trying to change the algorithm, it's very deeply gendered, and we know that, it's very well established. The question is, how do women want to be represented? How do they want to be seen? And we have to see them in intersectional identity respects, right? Because a woman in rural India, for example, she has a particular sense of self that, say, an urban woman has, which is very different, right? So she doesn't mind being photographed. If you're in rural India, so we went to Rajasthan to click a lot of these, like in a rural area, and women want to be shown at home because that's also where their work is. So their work, their professional and personal life comes together in their domestic sphere because they're loom makers. So their loom is literally in the center of their home, right? So then when you're talking about labeling of this content, are you saying this is a workplace, right? And that creates diversity of data. So we were creating prompts of workplace, work tools, and we were getting them to tell us how would they like it to be labeled, which is how you change the game. Get them involved in prompting, labeling, and also telling us what not to also represent. And that really is a pathway to...
The key to diversity is in listening to the people in the first place.
Absolutely.
Timandra?
Well, I think it's a very good example of the phenomenon that data and AI can only work with the data that is available, which is from the past. And when the past has been unfair, then the data reflects that, and then we look at it and go, well, that's unfair. Like, well, in some cases, that's because the reality has been unfair. So maybe it's telling us something we need to know. Not in every case. I mean, I think this is the other thing is that the data is not reflective of the whole of reality, and that's something easy to forget. I think we tend to think that everything is there now, everything's on the internet, but of course it's not. It's what is there is very selective. But one positive thing I think about this is that it kind of forces us to think about fairness and what fairness looks like, and what unfairness looks like, and what would a fair society look like? But then, okay, how do we get there for the actual society rather than just tweaking the internet? So the internet looks like the world is fair without actually changing the reality.
So let's change the reality. Gerd, but your androids, were they male? Were they female? It seemed that they were all men as far as the perception goes.
Yeah. Well, I spent about 2 hours on the internet looking for quotes from women about AI. And I only found Mira from OpenAI, the CTO of OpenAI. Yeah. But it was very hard to find a piece that fit, right? So the reality is, in AI, it's mostly white old guys, right? And I would say if there were more women in AI, we probably would have less issues with making it human. The reason that is I think it's quite clear that AI right now is about power and money.
Right.
And this is what men do.
And as Timandra says, this is reflecting the current reality.
Yeah. I think that will change dramatically, but right now it's very much like this. I mean, even if you go to stock footage sites, right, and you look for the AI robot, it's either going to be a sort of powerful-looking man or a sex robot, you know? Yeah. It's one of those two, and the sex robot, of course, is a woman, right? Yeah. So it's bizarre. This is the way it is. I mean, if you advertise for a data scientist on LinkedIn, was for a long time, LinkedIn wouldn't show you any women applying for this job because data scientists are men. It wouldn't show the ad to a woman automatically, right? Because they're disqualified because you're a woman to even see the ad, right? I mean, this is the reality that we're facing. And, you know, I run an organization of futurists, and I tell you, it's very hard to find women that will do similar things than currently the guys are doing, and we have to make an active effort. So I'm really for making that effort, making it 50-50 as much as we can. I hire only women, for example, for all of my work. You know, they're just better. They're just better. Hey, anyway, it's not an easy topic. Right?
Thank you for facing up and answering that question. Really appreciate it. We've got like 5 minutes left. I want to ask the panel, get ready panel, and in a minute I'm going to ask you for a really punchy sentence, just one sentence. What should everybody do to get the best out of the conference, given what you've been thinking about, all right? I'm going to ask you that in a second. Before that, going to ask you the question we've got here. Train versus teach is a great paradigm. It's a great way of thinking about things. But the people who control technology don't want us to be able to augment, change the algorithms and alter them. So how can we do that effectively? It was something you were talking about, Payal. So can you kick off with this one, and then we'll come back across. So how can we actually do what you were talking about?
I think one is that we need to get a little humble if you have power, and if you don't have power, you need to understand you have far more power than you do. So it's two different logics, and together, only together, we can make this happen. So, yeah.
Work together, and it comes down to our choice and our agency to do things.
Absolutely, because, you know, for example, their power is a number. There's, you know, the global south is this huge thing is, oh my God, is Africa going to be a lost continent again? Absolutely not. In fact, there's a leapfrogging because now you don't need to code to have, you know, to have control over and build apps. So you see this massive infusion of for Africa, by Africa, applications, digital ecosystems, and the momentum is so contagious. If anyone has gone there, you will feel it. You go to India, you will feel that they see a future and they are going to really embrace it. And while we are, you know, I think the bottom line is that pessimism is a sort of privilege for those who can afford to despair. The rest have no choice but to move forward, because our future depends on it.
Thank you for giving the big shout out to optimism and also to Africa. Right, let's get to that. I'm going to go straight to this final question. It's only 2,000 people, so no pressure. You're deciding their future for the next 2 days. What advice do you give to them to get the best out of the conference from your perspective of everything you've done, the researching, the writing, and everything? Let's go in the order we spoke. So we're going to go Gerd, Payal, and finish with Timandra. Gerd, begin with.
Well, my single advice would be get off the phone and talk to people, disconnect from everything else, talk to people, communicate, learn.
Get real, communicate, learn, and listen. Listen is the tough one, isn't it, apparently? That's what my wife tells me anyway. Payal, what should we do to get the best out of the next 2 days?
I challenge you to get into a really uncomfortable conversation.
Ooh.
Try not to be agreeable. And, in good faith, and now that you know that you've been mandated to do that, you can do it in a way which is not personal. But honestly, we really need these conversations because typically when we go to these conferences, we are like, yeah, sure, that's amazing. We're amazing. Everything's amazing. No, can we get past that and say, hey, I don't get this, right? Can you explain this one? It doesn't make sense. I'm just trying to process that.
Just to be clear, it's also okay to say something is amazing.
Of course, but look, we're all here. We're all on the same page in many ways. We want to network. The question is, can we get uncomfortable and build from that discomfort in ways which we all can benefit? That's all. In good faith, though, of course.
Let's disconnect. Let's have great comfort conversations. Love it. No pressure, Timandra.
Well, also, I agree with all these things. I think this is great advice. So all I would add would be try and hang on to a sense of what it is you're trying to do in terms of your wider mission, like what is it you're trying to do in learning or education, but then be really open to what are the different ways that might help you get there, and what are the new technologies there that might help you get there in unexpected ways. So I guess try and make a map of the whole territory and be open to going off to some side roads, but keep the whole map in your mind.
I love that. Have a map in your mind, disconnect, have conversations, be prepared to be uncomfortable, and you have license to be uncomfortable and to make other people uncomfortable as well, because she said so. There we go. All right. And I would say, above all, let's do it with humanity in this liminal space. We do need the hard work, and let's do it together. So thank you to you for your contributions, and thanks to our panel for a great kickoff for the conference. All right.